In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how you can create your own heart-shaped coin purse, which utilizes the technique of reverse applique, which is this fabric here, peeking through the top fabric. It has a zipper on one side and a key ring on the other. So let's get started and see what we're going to need in order to make this project. To get started, we're going to need 3 different kinds of fabric. So we're going to need the main fabric, the lining fabric, and then a contrasting fabric. You don't need much. You could pretty much work with scraps. You need a 4-inch zipper, a split ring or a keychain ring, some matching all-purpose thread, our patterns. You need pins and needles, your fabric marker, chalk, and then scissors. For this project, I'm going to be using the BERNINA B215 sewing machine. We need to make sure that we have the right accessories for this project. So the correct feet we need is a regular sewing machine foot, which is foot number 1, and then foot number 4, which is a zipper foot. Also check to make sure that your tension is at normal. So I'm going to check my dial up here and make sure that the dot is at the red line. Let's cut out what we need from our pattern piece. So there's only one pattern piece. Of this heart shape, you need to cut 2 out of your main fabric, which I'm going to do in the red. 2 pieces need to be cut out of the lining, and you only need to cut 1 out of a contrasting fabric. Take 1 piece of your main fabric and lay it on top of your contrasting fabric. So the right side of the contrasting fabric is going to go to the wrong side of the main fabric. Go ahead and pin these 2 pieces together. Baste your main fabric to your contrasting fabric. So you're using the longest stitch that you have on your machine. It doesn't matter what seam allowance you do, as this is just a temporary stitch to hold these 2 pieces together. Use your fabric marker or chalk to draw an outline of your applique image. So if you want to use our template and create a heart, you can do that. Or you can do any shape that you want as long as you have an image like this, and you want to make sure that you don't place it too close to the edge where there's a 1/4 inch seam allowance and you don't want it to run to that. So you want to have it pretty centralized. Next, you're going to pull away the main fabric from the contrasting fabric. So you can see I'm pulling that away because we're just going to be cutting, in this case, the red fabric on the inside of my outline here of my applique that I'm going to be creating. So I'm going to be cutting everything inside of my heart image here, but I'm not cutting to the line. I'm going to leave about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch of fabric on the inside of the line. So I'm cutting about here. So I'm just starting in the middle and then working my way outward. Again, I'm not cutting to the line, just a little bit before the line on the inside of that line there. And be careful that you do not cut your contrasting fabric. With the inside cut out, we can now see our contrasting fabric peeking through. So now what we're going to do is you're going to take what's remaining on the inside of the line and you're going to tuck it under so that the line ends up on the fold like this, and then you're going to pin everything in place. Now for corners or for curved areas, what you can do to make it a little bit easier so it curves more smoothly is you just cut a little slit with your scissors into the remaining fabric to your line here. So that just makes it a little bit easier. And you see I have one here and then I have one here. So then I'm able to make this curve a little bit easier. So I'm going to take what's left of the inside of the line, I'm going to fold it all under so you have a nice neat fold outlining the heart area. Next, we're going to be sewing around our applique, but before we do that, I want to point out one feature on the BERNINA which really helps in this situation because we're going to be sewing around curves and we're going to have to do a lot of pivoting. So normally on your machine, when you stop sewing, your needle is in the up position. So that's what happens on this BERNINA, and I know so because if you look here, you see a picture of your needle and then there's an arrow that goes up. There's this button here which is called the needle stop up and down button. So this controls this image here. So if I press it, you see the arrow now turns downward. So that means now when I stop sewing in my stitch, the needle is going to be down in the fabric. So this is really handy when I'm doing curves. I can stop sewing, the needle is going to be down in the fabric. All I have to do is just lift the foot and pivot the fabric so it's easier for me to go around curves. Now I'm going to stitch around my applique, and I'm going to, in this particular case, stitch on the red and get as close as I can to that fold line that we created. So I'm just going to go right along here around the whole thing. Now obviously because there are curves, You want to take your time and go slowly. And like I said before, see how my needle, when I stop sewing, it's down in the fabric, so I can just lift up my foot and then I can pivot it so it stays on track with where I want it to. Let's start putting our coin purse together. So here is the outside with my applique, and then I have a 4-inch zipper here. Now this is going to be placed here, but it's going to be with the right side of the zipper facing down towards the right side of my fabric here. And so the edge of the zipper is going to line up with the edge of my heart here, and it's mostly going to be on the straight edge. You're going to want to make sure that the bottom of the actual zipper is about 1 inch from this point down here. But before you pin it, go ahead and grab one of your lining pieces. You're going to place it right side together, lining up with the other heart and also the edge of the zipper. So the zipper is going to be sandwiched in between both of these layers. And then what we're going to do is do a stitching the zipper there. In preparation of sewing in my zipper, I'm going to take off my regular foot by pushing this release button in the back and putting on my zipper foot. There we go. Now the needle right now is in the center, so I need to move it over so it's in the groove on the side. And I push this button over here to move the needle. Just move it over till it's to the side, and now I can start sewing in my zipper. My zipper is sandwiched between these two layers, so it's not easy to see, but I'm just feeling for the zipper teeth with my finger and making sure that this side of my foot is lining up right alongside that. So it's not on top of it, it's right alongside of it, and I'm just kind of feeling with my finger with where that is. I'm just using a regular with stitch. Don't forget to back stitch, and you're only stitching the zipper tape part. You're not sewing any other parts. Now for this first part, I actually unzipped my zipper. So the tab is down here because I don't want the zipper tab to be getting in my way. So I'm going to sew most of the way. I'm going to stop with my needle in the fabric, lift my foot, zip up my zipper so then the tab is at the top, and then I can finish sewing the rest of the way. That's just so the tab doesn't get in the way of my sewing. So I'm going to do that now and just sew in this part of the zipper. This is what you should have so far. So we have 1/2 of our zipper stitched in between these two pieces of fabric, and then this is loose. So what we're going to do is grab our last two pieces. So I still have one red and I have one blue here, and you're just going to do the same thing where now we're dealing with this side of the zipper, making sure that your hearts are going in the right direction here. And you're going to sandwich the zipper tape just like you did before. So just to make it a little clearer, I'm just going to move these out of the way so you can see that clearly. This edge lines up with this edge of the zipper, making sure that you're going 1 inch from the bottom of the zipper to the bottom of the heart. And then I would do the same thing with the blue on this side. So then I'd pin it and I would stitch it just like we did before. Next, we're going to create a loop for our key ring. So you can use any of your fabric that you want. I'm using the contrasting fabric and I'm just using from the scraps. And you're going to cut a piece that's 1 1/4 by 2 inches. So it's 2 inches this way, 1 1/4 inches this way. What you're going to do is right side facing up. I'm going to fold it so the right side is in the middle. Go ahead and pin this raw edge and then stitch a 1/4 inch seam allowance from the raw edge. So then I get something like this. Now what we're going to do is turn this loop right side out. If you want, you can go ahead and trim a little bit off this raw edge. So you have about 1/8 of an inch left. I'm going to grab some heavy duty thread that I've knotted on one end and put on a decent sized needle. So at the fold, I'm going to stitch about 1/8 to 1/16 of an inch away from the edge of the loop. Don't put it too close to the edge because we don't want it to accidentally rip through it. And then I'm going to take the end of my needle, put it through the middle of my loop here. And then this is going to help me pull the whole thing right side out. And you may have to help it a little bit to get it started. But once it starts going through, it comes through pretty easily. And then you get something like this. So once we have this, we can take our split ring, fold it in half, and that's what's going to create our loop. Take your main pouch piece, and we're going to lay it out. So right now I have the outer side facing out with right side up. Now here's my loop with my little split ring here. I'm going to place it about right here on the side of the heart that does not have a zipper. And pin that into place. And we're going to start pinning all our things together, all the outside edges. So just make sure that your zipper is down, not all the way, leave maybe about an inch, because we're going to need to have an opening in order to turn it right side out. So the outer, in my case red with red, right sides together. And here's my lining, blue with blue, right sides together. And I'm going to line up these two sides, and I'm going to pin all the way around so they're all pinned together. Now that we've pinned it, we can go ahead and stitch together our 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around also. But the one thing I want to point out is this. You can see on this side of my lining, I did 2 X's with my pins. I have one here and one here. And you can see I just crossed the pins across to create these X's. So everything in between these X's, I'm not going to stitch. And the distance is about 2 to 3 inches. Just so you have enough room in order to stick your fingers in to pull the whole thing right side out. So this is on the straighter side of the heart, on the opposite side of where the zipper is, right here in the middle. Now when we're stitching it around, we have this point down here, which is the heart points. So I'm actually going to stitch these separately. So I would start here on the red side. I'm going to pull this blue side out of the way and try to get up as far as you can to the zipper. You're going to stitch down to the point, you're going to pivot, stitch around this top part. You can go ahead and stitch over to the lining part. Stitch here, stop, back stitch, cut your threads. Then we're going to start again at this next X. I'm going to pull the red part out of the way this time. And in this case, I'm going to stitch here, stitch to the point, and then pivot up as far as I can to my zipper. Now you might not be able to get exactly to where your stitching line is for your zipper, which is fine. We can always fix that with a slip stitch after we turn the whole thing right side out. After I finish stitching my seam, I just do a quick little stitch from here, the edge of my heart, to the top of the zipper, just so I don't have a hole right there where the end of my zipper is. So I just do that, and then like I do with all my curves, I clip notches into the curved areas of the heart, especially in the middle of the heart and at the point of the heart here. Then, since we have this opening here and the opening in our zipper, we can pull the whole thing right side out. Keeping your lining out, we're now going to hand sew our opening closed. So this is the opening where we turned everything right side out, and I went ahead and pinned it all into place. So now it's closed, and I made sure that I turned under 1/4 of an inch on each side. So it has a nice, neat ending here. And all I'm going to do is slip stitch my whole close. So I'm doing this by hand. Remove this pin. So I grab a little bit of this side, grab a little bit of the other side, and I keep going back and forth between the two sides until I get to the end of the opening. The lining can now go to the inside of our coin purse, and you may have to play with it a little bit to get it all into the different portions of the heart. You can go ahead and remove any marks that you still have from your chalk or your pen, and you can also remove any basting stitches if they're showing. And with that, we're all done, so enjoy your new coin purse.